And now for Tuesday's reading of The Velveteen Rabbit. We left the story when the boy loved the bunny so much that the nursery magic came true, and now he was real. That was a wonderful summer. Near the house where they lived there was a wood, and in long June evenings the boy liked to go there after tea to play. He took the Velveteen Rabbit with him, and before he wandered off to pick flowers or play at brigands among the trees, he always made the rabbit a little nest somewhere among the bracken, where he could be quite cozy, for he was a kind-hearted little boy, and he liked the bunny to be comfortable. So bracken is just a group of like branches and bushes, sort of where you can make a nest, kind of like at the edge of a forest. One evening the rabbit was lying there alone, watching the ants that ran to and fro between his velvet paws in the grass. He saw two strange beings creep out of the tall bracken near him. They were rabbits like himself, but quite furry and brand new. They must have been very well made, for their seams didn't show at all, and they changed shape in a queer way when they moved. One minute they were long and thin, and then the next minute fat and bunchy, instead of always staying the same like he did. Did y'all guess what these are? Real rabbits. Their feet patted softly on the ground, and they crept quite close to him, twitching their noses, while the rabbit stared hard to see which side of the clockwork stuck out, for he knew that people who jump generally have something on them to wind them up. But he couldn't see it. They were evidently a new kind of rabbit altogether. They stared at him, and the little rabbit stared back, and all the time their noses twitched. "Why don't you get up and play with us?" one of them asked. "I don't feel like it," said the rabbit, for he didn't want to explain that he had no clockwork. "Ho!" said the furry rabbit. "It's as easy as anything," and he gave a big hop sideways and stood on his hind legs. "I don't believe you can." "I can," said the little rabbit. "I can jump higher than anything." He meant when the boy threw him, but of course he didn't want to say so. "Can you hop on your hind legs?" asked the furry rabbit. That was a dreadful question, for the Velveteen Rabbit had no hind legs at all. The back of him was made all in one piece, like a pincushion. He sat still in the bracken and hoped the other rabbits wouldn't notice. So if you notice, they don't really make stuffed animals like this anymore, but all of this, it just helps him sit there. He doesn't really have legs down there. The only thing I could find in my house that showed that is kind of like this cat. It's all just shaped in, so she's just sitting here. I know it's hard, but you can do that with a stuffed animal too, where you just have the shape, but there's actually no legs that come apart, and that's what the Velveteen Rabbit was. But the wild rabbits had very sharp eyes, and this one stretched his neck and looked. "He hasn't got any hind legs. Fancy a rabbit without any hind legs," and he began to laugh. "I have," said the little rabbit. "I have got hind legs. I'm sitting on them." "Then stretch 'em out and show me, like this," said the wild rabbit, and he began to whirl around and dance till the little rabbit got quite dizzy. "I don't like dancing. I'd rather sit still." But all the while he was longing to dance, for a funny new tickly feeling ran through him, and he felt he would give anything in the world to be able to jump about like these rabbits. The strange rabbit stopped dancing and came quite close. He came so close that his long whiskers brushed the Velveteen Rabbit's ear, and then he wrinkled his nose suddenly and flattened his ears and jumped backwards. He doesn't smell right. He isn't a rabbit at all. He isn't real." "I am real," said the little rabbit. "I'm real. The boy said so," and he nearly began to cry. Just then there was a sound of footsteps, and the boy ran past them. With a stamp of feet and a flash of white tails, the two strange rabbits disappeared. "Come back and play with me," called the little rabbit. "Oh, do come back. I know I am real." There was no answer. Only the little ants ran to and fro, and the bracken swayed where the two strangers had passed. The Velveteen Rabbit was all alone. "Oh dear," he thought. "Why did they run away like that? Why couldn't they stop and talk to me?" For a long time he lay still, watching the bracken, hoping they would come back, but they never returned, and presently the sun sank lower, and the little white moths fluttered out, The boy came and carried him home. Weeks passed, and the little rabbit grew very old and shabby, but the boy loved him just as much. He loved him so hard he loved all his whiskers off, and the pink lining on his ears began to turn gray, and his brown spots faded. He began to lose his shape. He scarcely looked like a rabbit any more, except to the boy. To him he was always beautiful, and that's all that mattered to the little rabbit. He didn't mind how he looked to other people, because nursery magic had made him real, and when you are real, shabbiness doesn't matter. And then one day the boy was ill. His face grew very flushed, and he talked in his sleep, and his little body was so hot it burned, and the rabbit when he held him close. Strange people came and went in the nursery, and a light burned all night through it all. The little Velveteen Rabbit lay there, hidden from sight under the bedclothes. He never stirred, for he was afraid if they found him, they might take him away, and he knew the boy needed him. It was a long, weary time, for the boy was too ill to play, and the little rabbit found it rather dull with nothing to do all day. But he snuggled down patiently, and he looked forward to the time when the boy should be well again, and they would go out in the garden amongst the flowers and the butterflies, and play splendid games in the raspberry thicket like they used to. All sorts of delightful things he planned, and while the boy lay half asleep, he crept up close to the pillow and he whispered them in his ear. Presently the fever turned, and the boy got better. He was able to sit up in bed and look at picture books, and while the little rabbit cuddled close at his side, and then one day they let him get up and dress. It was a bright sunny morning, and the window stood wide open. They had carried the boy out on the balcony and wrapped him in a shawl, and the little rabbit lay tangled up among the bedclothes thinking. The boy was going to the seaside tomorrow. Everything was arranged, and now only remained to carry out the doctor's orders. They talked about it all while the little rabbit lay under the bedclothes, with just his head peeping out and listening. The room was to be disinfected, and all the books and toys that the boy had played with in his bed must be burnt. "Hurrah!" thought the little rabbit. "Tomorrow we'll go to the seaside." For the little boy often talked of the seaside, and he wanted very much to see the big waves coming in, and the tiny crabs and the sand castles. But just then Nana caught sight of him. "How about this old bunny?" "That?" said the doctor. "Why, it's a mass of scarlet fever germs. Burn it at once." "What? Nonsense! Get him a new one. He mustn't have that any more." Oh, no. So the little rabbit was put into a sack with the old picture books and lots of rubbish, and he was carried out to the end of the garden behind the fowl house. And here he is. And under the picture it says "anxious times." I think that was kind of the rabbit when the boy was so ill. It was a fine place to make a bonfire, only the gardener was too busy just then to attend to it. He had the potatoes to dig and the green peas to gather, but next morning he promised to come quite early and burn the whole lot. Oh, that's not a good thing, right? His beloved rabbit. But sometimes when you're very, very ill, you get germs on things. We kind of know how that's going on now, right? We have to be really careful and wash our hands and disinfect everything. Well, they don't want to take any chances, because the scarlet fever was a very dangerous disease. So now they want to get rid of all the toys, including the Velveteen Bunny. So tomorrow we'll have our last reading and finish up the book. Take care.